So this video is intended to explain you how to operate our Agilent GCs. So we have a Agilent 8890 equipped with two HP columns. So we have a front and a back injector. And this is rather exotic. Usually you have only one column in your instrument, but I bought one with two columns because this makes it less expensive and we can operate more samples in less time. So the HP5 column is a 5% phenyl methyl polysiloxane coated column. So this means you have this molecule here at the surface, and as you can see, these are greasy molecules, an aryl or phenyl, methyl, and obviously there will be interactions with your greasy compounds which you are injecting. So here we have, as I said, a front and a back injector. And both are equipped with exactly the same column. However, the retention times will be slightly different, so keep that in mind. We have only one GC method, so I tried to make the GC method as general as possible. So please don't inject with other methods, don't create your own methods, except for maybe very special cases where you can ask me, but always stick with this method. So this method is a isotherm at 70 degrees for 3 minutes. This means here all the volatile compounds will be eluted and then or vaporized. And then we have a ramp which is relatively mild. So again, to separate as good as possible volatile compounds. And here a ramp at 20 degrees where there are more harsh conditions until about 17.5 minutes. And this will elute the less volatile compounds. So here is a chem draw which explains you a little bit which compound is eluting when in the column. So first we have the solvent peak, which is typically before 1.5 minutes. So here it's a very big peak where the solvent comes out. Here this is the scale in minutes, so from 2 to 20 minutes. So our method is 20.5 minutes. And as you can see here, the GC is a great tool for mostly hydrocarbon compounds bearing some functionality. So like methoxy groups, nitrile groups, chlorides, ketones, aldehydes, etc. In the GC method, we have different types of temperature. As I said previously, first an isotherm until 3 minutes at 70 degrees. So here, for example, L-benzene or decane is eluted, so very volatile compounds. Then we heat slowly, and we can separate here compounds with very similar molecular weight. Keep in mind that the molecular weight increases not in a linear fashion, but increases with the temperature, which is logic. Typically, a higher molecular weight compounds evaporate or are less volatile than small compounds. And this chart also helps you to identify maybe compounds which you cannot track by GCMS, so to estimate approximately the molecular weight. So for example, if something elutes, a molecule elutes is noticed on the GC trace between 10 and 30 minutes, you can probably say it has a molecular weight about 200. And here about 250, and the maximum is around 300 grams per mole. So here we have the ramp of 20 degrees per minute, so 130 until 300 degrees. Note that because of the interactions, alcohols, amines, and carboxylic acids give tracing. So tracing is when you don't have sharp peaks, but a peak which is high. And then, let me draw that to you. So you don't have sharp peaks, but you will have a peak which is high and then is sort of tracing along. So this is tracing, and it's typical for alcohols, amines, carboxylic acids, and others. Let's hide that again. So for very polar compounds, obviously this scale doesn't apply. So polar compounds will elute in terms of molecular weight later than hydrocarbon compounds. So A polar compound with a molecular weight of 150 might be well observed in this area and not here. So this scale here is only approximatively. Here these two compounds, they also form diastereoisomers, which allude at different retention times, which I didn't note here. So it's probably 0.1, approximately 0.1 until 0.2 minutes difference between the two diastereoisomers. So keep that in mind, that the GC is typically able to separate diastereoisomers. Not always, but often. So how to prepare your sample? A GC is a very sensitive instrument. So it can even detect micrograms. And in order to avoid overconcentration, the GC function is on split mode, which means we typically are on a split mode 1 to 25. So 4% of your sample, so your sample, which actually is injected, it's a micro syringe of 1 microliter, is 0.04 microliter. So this extremely low concentration. So we can go to the micro and nanogram. So in practice, what we do is we fill, if it's a pure compound, a maximum of 1 milligram per milliliter. So 1 milligram is, so here we have a pipette. This is not very well seen. Let's show that to you, what I mean. So here we have the pipette. I think you should be able to see that on the video. And here is a ruler. And so it's just 1 millimeter, sorry. So this corresponds approximately, this volume here, it corresponds to 1 milligram. So don't fill up your pipette more than with 1 millimeter of compound. Just a little bit of the tip. And this is already more than enough for a GC sample. So a sample from the crude reaction needs to be done differently. Obviously, a crude reaction, there are solvents, so it's diluted. And so this is why we have to do a quick calculation. So let's say the total amount of solvents is 6 milliliter of hexane, so you add 20 milliliter of THF, 3 milliliter of toluene, so that would be 29 milliliters. Then you look at the reaction. So let's say it's a reaction which gives you 100%, if it would be 100% yield, 500 milligram of your product. You can also just look at the substrate. If it's maybe 300 or 400 milligrams of substrate, you can do the same calculation. So it's an approximate calculation. So then you divide 500 milligrams by 29, which indicates that you have 17 milligrams per milliliter of solvent. And for the crude reaction, we want to have 4 milligrams. So why not 1 milligram then for a pure compound? Because it's a crude reaction, so if you have 50% conversion, you would have 2 milligrams and 2 milligrams. But typically we have side reactions, so it's usually a little bit less than 2 milligrams. So if you inject 4 milligrams and it would be the pure compound, okay, it would be over concentrated, but it's not dramatic. But typically that's a good idea to stay about 4 milligrams. So then we will take out 4 divided by 17 is 0.235. So we take out 0.24 milliliters. This is approximately, like you can also take out 0.2 milliliters. You will still be fine. But it gives you an approximate idea how much you should take out of the crude reaction and then analyze it. Be careful if there are organometallics which are involved, so N-butyl lithium, ethyl magnesium bromide, and so on. Always do a mini quench first. Don't eject the crude reaction. So take your sample which you calculated, add it to a 2 milliliter vial filled with 1 molar HCl, for example 0.5 milliliter, add 1 milliliter of diethyl ether, and then shake it so you can hydrolyze your reaction mixture, and you don't inject any alcoholates or lithium salts in your GC, which can actually clog your syringe. So it's very important that you always do a hydrolysis. If metals are involved, so you do copper catalysis, iron catalysis, or whatever, always filter your suspension, or you have suspensions, always filter your solution over a plug of silica and then rinse with ether or ethyl acetate. Because if you put there a vial with a suspension, it will clog your GC. So now let's do some GC analysis. First thing you have to do is to switch on the GC and then switch on the online mode, so the software. If you do it in another fashion, it will probably show you some error message. So think about this, or keep this in mind. Switch on the GC first and switch on then the online mode. So now we are at the GC and I will start the video which I did back then. Explain you how to use the GC. Typically you have two windows open, the online and the offline. The online, that's more or less just what's happening right now on the GC. So as you can see here, no signal. The GC is actually just cooling down. The offline is where you treat the data. So I will show you how that works. It's really simple. So most of it is automatic. So you go on, for example, this sample here, then you click on, so you don't treat anything here. You just click on print report. Remember the experiment name. You go and save. So I know it's DM 423 D1. At least that's what I think it was. It was 421. Okay, let's go to the. So here an error was done. I indicated the wrong name, so you can change the name. Here it is. So let's rename that. Okay. And the other one, same procedure, review, print report. So you need a little bit of good memory because here you can change anything. Let's go back a little bit in the video. Same. Okay. And the stop. So here you can see the solvent peak, which I said is before 1.7 minutes, and your compound is later. So here typically we are not interested in these peaks, and that is why the GC method, or what we told the GC, is not calculating anything for these peaks. So it's cutting back actually the solvent. The other one, same procedure, review, print report. 423, so you need a little bit of good memory because here you can change anything. So that's a little bit unfortunate here that you cannot check the window, what was open before. These I don't think you can. No, it's complicated. Okay, so it's fraction. Let's say XX if you don't know, and then later on you can always change it. So here you can see, okay, it was F21. So you go back to the data and you name it correctly, rename F21. Oh, okay, so apparently there's already a similar file which is there. Then you double click. You go on print and you choose our printer, and usually it should already show here 2 pages per sheet, because usually it's more than 1 page, so we don't use too much paper. And we will click on print. Okay. So that's working nicely. That's about all you need to know about offline. So you go to the sequence which you are interested in, the day, and then or what is in progress, and you print out your schemes. So that's something I will do later. Here, typically when you arrive, when a sequence is finished, it will show you that. So you just go on abort run, go on stop. So that's when a sequence is finished, which is often the case. And then you have to wait a little bit. Here you see it's orange. And after some time, you can reopen the sequence table. And you can see you can change names. Here you can write whatever you want to. So how does it work here? So 1 is the front column. It's also shown here. 1 front, 1 back. 2 is the back. So the position 101 would be the front column, the first position. 201 would be the back column, the first position. And so you have to alternate all the time, front, back, front, back, front, back. You can copy them, right click, copy, paste. And the standby method here is always the last one. For some reason it adds an extra line which you have to delete. So clear or delete, or it's cut before running. So what I typically do is I take as many as I need, so copy, and then you go on paste. I will alternate 102, 101, 201, 102, 202, 103, 203, 104, 204, and so on. So now we have 8 vials, 4 on the front, 4 on the back. Here you should have different names, obviously corresponding to your method. This here is always the standard method duo. There's no other method, so don't add any methods. It's always this one here. We will never change it. So we know what the retention or the times are. Make sure that dual simultaneous injections are activated. Then you go on OK. Don't go on run. Don't go on run. You go on OK, and then save the sequence. Save sequence template. So if there was already several injections per day, add a, for example, you have 4. If it's a new date, so this, let's say tomorrow would be the 9, and then you don't add the 4. Okay, so this is actually wrong. It would be better to do it 2022 minus 07 minus 09. So in the other way, we will change that in the future, because otherwise it's not in a right order. So it will arrange it concerning the days and not concerning the year or month. So I will have to change that. So keep that in mind. It's first the year, then the month, then the day, not the other way around. Then you go again on sequence table. As I said, for some reason it adds this file here. You go on cut, and then you go on run, and you click on OK if it asks you. So I will not do that right now because I'm not doing this reaction or this sequence. So cancel, OK. So imagine it's the Friday afternoon and everybody's going home. Maybe I will explain that in a second. First, let's imagine the sequence is running. So you will see activated or highlighted those which are running. And then you can always add samples. If it's somehow at the end, let's say it was front back and then there was one front, then unfortunately you can only add onto the front column. It will not inject except back column injections. So it will give you some error message that it can only be front column. That's okay if you have a couple of samples. If you have many samples, then just wait until the sequence is finished and then restart a new sequence. So if it's Friday afternoon and you want to switch off the GC, what you have to do is obviously wait until the sequence is finished. So don't plan too many samples for Friday afternoon. So that's the case right now. Look on the GC at what temperature your the column is. So right now it's 78 degrees. So you can open the GC oven to cool it down a little bit more fast. So that's what I'm doing